Close your eyes. The past is about to speak. When you think of a medieval peasant's life, you might imagine a scene of rustic simplicity. Perhaps you picture a cozy, thatched-roof cottage with a merry fire crackling in the hearth, the air filled with the scent of baking bread, and a life of hard but honest work in rolling green fields. It's a romantic notion, one of bucolic peace and a deep connection to the land. But for the vast majority of people living in this era, the reality was a far cry from this pastoral fantasy. The cottage was a dim, smoke-filled, one-room hovel you often shared with your animals. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and unwashed bodies. And the food, well, let's just say you probably wouldn't last a day foraging for your meals in this world, much less enjoying them. It was a life of relentless, monotonous, and back-breaking survival. Before we step into that world, feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments below. It's always wonderful to see where everyone is listening from as we begin our journey. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together, where history whispers you to sleep. The first thing you notice is not a thing you see, but a sound you feel. It is the soft, persistent patter of rain on the thatch above your head. It's a gentle, drumming rhythm that has been the soundtrack to your sleep, a constant companion through the dark hours. There is no alarm clock, no jarring noise to pull you from your dreams. There is only the rain, the slow shift in the quality of the darkness, and a growing chill that seeps through your thin woolen blanket. You are curled on a straw-stuffed mattress on the floor, sharing this small space with the warm, breathing bodies of your family. The air is heavy and close, a complex mixture of scents. The damp, earthy smell of the packed dirt floor, the sharp tang of wood smoke lingering from last night's fire, the faint, animal scent of unwashed wool and sleeping people, and perhaps even the subtle, musky aroma of the family goat, brought inside for warmth and safety. You open your eyes, but it barely makes a difference. The inside of your home is a world of deep shadows and murky gray light. The only source of illumination is a small, shuttered opening in the wall, less a window and more a hole to let out the smoke. To open it is to invite the cold, damp morning air inside, a trade-off between light and warmth that is a constant, unspoken negotiation. For now, it remains closed. Your gaze drifts toward the center of the single room, where the heart of your home, the hearth, lies. A few embers still glow with a deep, pulsating orange, like sleeping dragon's eyes, buried beneath a blanket of soft, gray ash. Someone else is already stirring. You see a silhouette move with a familiar, practiced slowness. It is your mother. She doesn't speak. Mornings are not for conversation. They are for the quiet, shared ritual of beginning another day. You watch as she kneels by the hearth, her movements economical and precise. She gently blows on the embers, her breath a soft whisper in the quiet room. A tiny flame flickers, weak and hesitant at first, then catches on the dry tinder she adds. The flame grows, casting long, dancing shadows that make the familiar shapes of your home seem strange and alive. The low, crackling sound of the reviving fire joins the gentle drumming of the rain, creating a soothing, ageless harmony. As the fire gains strength, it begins to illuminate the space. You see the rough, uneven texture of the wattle and daub walls, the dark, soot-stained roof beams above, and the few meager possessions that furnish your world. A crude wooden chest, a few clay pots, and the loom that stands silent in the corner. There is no privacy here, no separate rooms to retreat to. Your entire life, sleeping, eating, working, being born, and dying, happens within these four walls. Now that the fire is alive, the first and most important task of the day begins. Your mother reaches for the large iron cauldron that hangs permanently over the hearth. It has not been properly emptied or scrubbed clean in your entire lifetime. Inside is the remnant of yesterday's dinner and the dinner from the day before that. This is the foundation of your breakfast. This is pottage. She adds a dipper of water from a wooden bucket, the sizzle and steam momentarily filling the air with a slightly sour, oaty scent. She gives it a stir with a long wooden spoon, the scraping sound echoing in the small space. You sit up, the coarse wool of your tunic scratching against your skin. The cold air bites at your exposed face and hands. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders and shuffle closer to the growing warmth of the fire. There is no morning coffee, no tea, no sweet juice. There is only this. This is the taste of your morning every morning. Your breakfast is a continuation of your dinner, a cycle as predictable as the rising and setting of the sun. Historians can only piece together the likely ingredients based on archaeological finds and manorial records, as no peasant would have thought to write down a recipe for something so fundamental, so ever-present. It was likely a thick gruel of oats, barley, or rye, boiled endlessly with whatever vegetables were on hand: onions, leeks, cabbage, peas from the small garden patch. Your mother ladles the warm, grayish mixture into a rough wooden bowl and hands it to you. You take it in your cold hands, the warmth seeping gratefully into your fingers. You don't need a spoon. You have your own personal utensil, a piece of dark, heavy bread from yesterday's baking. This bread, called trench bread, is stale and dense, designed more for utility than for pleasure. It serves as your spoon, your plate, and a portion of your meal all in one. You dip a corner of the hard bread into the pottage, letting it soak up the thick liquid. You bring it to your mouth. The taste is familiar. It is the definition of bland. It's warm, which is its primary virtue. It's slightly salty, perhaps from a precious pinch of salt or from the salted pork that might have been boiled in the pot last week. Its memory now just a faint, ghostly flavor. It is gritty. The grains were milled on a stone quern, and tiny particles of sand and stone are an unavoidable ingredient in every loaf of bread, in every bowl of pottage. You chew slowly, methodically. This is not a meal to be savored. It is fuel. It is the energy you need to face the long day of labor ahead. As you eat, you look around the dim room at your family, each person silently consuming the same meal, lost in their own thoughts, united in this simple, monotonous act of survival. This single pot, simmering day after day, is a testament to your resilience. It represents the skill of making something from almost nothing, of stretching meager resources to sustain life, one bland, gritty spoonful at a time. The rain has not stopped. You can still hear its soft, persistent drumming on the roof, a constant reminder of the damp world that awaits you outside. As you finish your morning meal, the pottage leaves a thin, starchy film in your mouth, a taste that will linger for hours. There is no second course, no sweet treat to follow. Breakfast is a task completed, not an experience enjoyed. You scrape the last of the gruel from your bowl with the now soggy piece of trench bread and eat the makeshift spoon itself, leaving no waste. Every calorie is precious. Your attention returns to the cauldron hanging over the fire. This pot is the unmoving center of your culinary universe. It is a perpetual stew, a living, bubbling entity that carries the history of your family's meals within its iron walls. Scholars often refer to this as a perpetual soup or hunter's pot, and while the concept seems almost romantic, a pot that is never empty, the reality is far less charming. This is not about developing complex, layered flavors over time. This is about efficiency and scarcity. Cleaning the pot would require precious water, time, and the effort of scrubbing away the seasoned, protective layer that has built up on the iron. More importantly, emptying it would mean wasting the remnants, the thick, nutrient-rich sludge at the bottom that provides a base for the next meal. In a world without refrigeration, the constantly simmering pot also kept its contents from spoiling, a slow, continuous pasteurization. Your mother adds more ingredients to the pot for the evening meal, which is already in preparation just moments after breakfast has concluded. The day's pottage begins where the last one left off. She throws in a handful of dried peas, hard as little pebbles, that have been soaking overnight in a bowl of water. You hear the soft plunk as they hit the simmering liquid. She adds a rough chopped onion, its sharp scent momentarily cutting through the stale air. A few leaves of wilted cabbage follow. Whatever is available goes into the pot. There is no recipe, only a principle of continuous addition. You imagine the layers of flavor, if one could call them that, mingling within the cauldron. The memory of last week's salted bacon, the week before's meager bit of chicken, the ghosts of countless turnips, leeks, and beans, all simmering together. Sometimes, on a fortunate day, a scrap of meat or a bit of bone with some marrow might be added. This would be a cause for quiet celebration, the richness of the fat adding a welcome depth and energy to the meal for days to follow. But today is not one of those days. Today, the additions are humble, drawn from your small garden plot and the dwindling winter stores. There's no sense of culinary creativity here. This is survival. There are no Yelp reviews for your mother's pottage, no food bloggers to impress. The only metric for success is whether it fills your belly and gives you the strength to work. You think about the bread you just ate. It's another cornerstone of your diet, but it's nothing like the soft, airy loaves you might imagine. The grain, usually barley or rye, as wheat was often reserved for the lord of the manor, is milled at the lord's mill. This was not a choice. It was a legal obligation. You were forbidden from owning your own millstone. For the privilege of using his mill, the lord's miller would take a portion of your flour, a tax known as a multure, which was often extracted with a heavy hand. Historians note that millers were frequently stereotyped as dishonest figures in medieval tales, accused of taking more than their fair share, a reputation likely born from the peasants' complete dependence on them. The flour you get back is coarse, and often contains not just the aforementioned grit from the millstones, but also ground-up husks, dirt, and sometimes even the flour of cheaper grains like beans or peas to stretch the supply. Baking this bread is a laborious process. It's done not in a fine oven, but often in a communal village oven or on a hot stone placed directly in the embers of your hearth. The resulting loaf is dark, dense, and heavy, with a thick, hard crust that helps it stay preserved for longer. This is not artisan sourdough. It is a brick of sustenance. Its very hardness is a feature, not a bug. It forces you to chew for a long time, making a small amount feel more substantial. It travels well, wrapped in a cloth for a day's labor in the fields. And as you know from this morning, it serves as an excellent, if slightly unhygienic, utensil for your endless pottage. As you sit by the fire, you watch your father mending a leather strap on one of his tools. His hands, gnarled and stained with dirt, move with a slow, practiced patience. Life is a cycle of mending and making do. Nothing is disposable. A broken tool is repaired, a torn tunic is patched, and the pot of pottage is never, ever empty. It is a perfect metaphor for your life, a continuous process of carrying on from what was left the day before, adding what little you have, and stirring it all together in the hope that it will sustain you for one more day. The monotony is staggering. The same meal, twice a day, every day, with only minor variations dictated by the season. The rain seems to be letting up slightly. The drumming on the roof softens to a gentle hiss. It is time to go out. The day's real work must begin. You stand up, your joints stiff from the cold floor. You pull on a pair of worn leather shoes, their soles thin from countless miles of walking. As you and your father prepare to leave, your mother takes a cloth bag and puts into it a chunk of the heavy bread and perhaps a hard, crumbly piece of cheese. This will be your midday meal. There is no warm pottage waiting for you in the fields. Your lunch will be cold, hard, and eaten with dirty hands under an often gray sky. You give a last glance at the simmering pot, its contents already bubbling away for the evening. It will be there when you return, a warm, if unexciting, promise at the end of a long day of labor. It is the past, the present, and the future, all bubbling together in one single, never-ending pot. You pull a heavy woolen cloak over your tunic, the damp, slightly greasy feel of the fabric a familiar weight on your shoulders. The air outside the hovel, once you unlatch the simple wooden door, is a shock to the system. It's cold and raw, carrying the clean, earthy scent of wet soil and decaying leaves. The world is painted in muted shades of green and brown, softened by the lingering mist. The rain has dwindled to a fine drizzle that hangs in the air, clinging to your eyelashes and beating on the rough wool of your cloak. You step out onto the muddy track that serves as a road, the ground sucking at your thin shoes with every step. Your destination this morning is the woods. The very word carries a complex weight, a mixture of opportunity and immense risk. The forest looms at the edge of the village fields, a dark, dense tapestry of ancient trees. It is a place of shadows and secrets, a world away from the open, cultivated land where you spend most of your days. In your mind, the woods are not a serene nature preserve for a relaxing hike. They are the Lord's private property. Every tree, every animal, Every stream within its bounds belongs to him. To you, it is a forbidden pantry, a place where the line between survival and crime is perilously thin. You walk with your father, not towards the deep, dark heart of the forest, but along its scraggly edges. You are not hunting for game. That would be madness. You are here for what the law, in its grudging way, sometimes allows a peasant: the right of estover. This is the right to take wood, but it is a right fraught with restrictions. You cannot simply cut down a tree. That is the Lord's timber, reserved for building castles and ships. Instead, you are allowed to gather fallen branches, the dead wood that has been brought down by wind and age. The phrase you live by is by hook or by crook, which for you is not a metaphor for using any means necessary. It is a literal description of your tools. You carry a long pole with a hook on the end, a bill hook, and your father has a shepherd's crook. With these, you can pull down dead branches that are still attached to the trees. Anything you can't reach with your hook or your crook is off limits. To be caught with an axe or a saw would be to be branded a poacher, with severe consequences. As you enter the gloomy eaves of the forest, the sounds of the village fade away, replaced by the quiet drip of water from leaf to leaf, and the soft squelch of your feet in the mud. The air here is different, thicker, smelling of damp moss, rotting wood, and the rich, loamy scent of the forest floor. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy, filtering down in weak, shifting columns that illuminate swirling motes of mist. It is a beautiful and intimidating place. You and your father work in silence, your eyes scanning the branches above and the ground below. You find a fallen oak branch, slick with rain and half buried in the leaf litter. It's heavy, seasoned wood, perfect for the fire. It will burn slow and hot, a welcome change from the fast-burning kindling you usually scrounge. Breaking it down into manageable pieces is hard work without an axe. You use your weight to snap it over a fallen log, the crack of the wood echoing unnervingly in the quiet woods. Each sound makes you flinch, your head snapping up to listen for the approach of the reeve or the Lord's forester. They are the guardians of the Lord's property, and they are not known for their leniency. The penalties for breaking the forest law are brutal and designed to be a powerful deterrent. Being caught cutting down a living tree could result in a hefty fine, the confiscation of your tools, or even being placed in the stocks for public humiliation. While the most extreme punishments like blinding or hanging were reserved for poaching the king's deer in a royal forest, the lord of your manor had his own courts and his own harsh justice. The fear of these consequences is a constant, nagging presence at the back of your mind. It makes you cautious, your movements furtive. You also gather kindling, smaller twigs and sticks that will help start the fire. This is less risky, but you still do it with a sense of urgency. You are not alone in this endeavor. Other villagers will be doing the same, and the supply of easily accessible deadwood is finite. It is a quiet competition, a daily race to gather enough fuel to cook your pottage and keep the chill at bay for another night. Beyond wood, the forest edge offers other small bounties if you know where to look. You keep an eye out for certain types of fungus growing on the tree bark, which can be used as tinder, and for strong, flexible vines that can be used for weaving or tying. Every single thing has a potential use. Nothing is just a plant. It is a tool, a medicine, a resource. Historians often debate the extent to which peasants relied on foraged goods versus what they grew themselves. The consensus is that it varied dramatically based on region and the strictness of the local lord. For you, in this moment, the forest is a critical supplement to a life of scarcity. After an hour or so of this tense, damp work, you have gathered a respectable bundle of wood. You tie it together with a piece of rough rope, and your father hefts the heavy load onto his back. The wood will need to be left near the hearth to dry before it can be used, a slow and patient process. Your own smaller bundle feels heavy, and the rough bark scrapes against your hands. The work is not done, but the riskiest part of the day's foraging is over. As you turn to leave the woods, your heart still beating a little faster than usual, you feel a profound sense of relief. You are walking out of the Lord's domain and back into the familiar territory of the village fields. You have taken something from the forbidden pantry without being caught. It is a small victory, but it is a victory nonetheless. The wood you carry is more than just fuel. It is a measure of your success, a tangible result of your courage and your knowledge of the forest's rules, both written and unwritten. It represents another night of warmth, another cooked meal, another small defiance against a world designed to keep you in your place. Leaving the tense quiet of the Lord's woods behind, you emerge into the wide, open expanse of the common fields. The sky is a vast, pearly gray sheet, and the drizzle has finally ceased, leaving the air feeling washed and clean. The landscape here is a patchwork of long, narrow strips of land, separated by low, grassy banks or stones. These are the fields you work for most of the year, a landscape that is as familiar to you as the lines on your own hand. But your work here today is not the back-breaking labor of plowing or harvesting. You are still in the mode of a forager, a gatherer of what the land might offer up freely. As you walk along the muddy path that separates the woods from the fields, something catches your eye. It is a movement in the distance, a flash of tawny brown against the green. A small group of deer stands at the far edge of a fallow field, their heads raised, alert and graceful. They are beautiful creatures, their bodies sleek and powerful. And for a fleeting moment, you see them not as animals but as food. A single one of those animals could feed your family for a month. The thought is so potent, so tempting, that it is almost painful. Venison is the meat of kings and lords, a symbol of status and wealth so far beyond your reach it might as well be mythical. But the desire is instantly crushed by a wave of cold, hard fear. That deer is not a potential meal. It is a walking symbol of the gallows. Poaching a deer was one of the most serious crimes you could commit against the Lord's property, often considered worse than stealing his money. The forest laws, established by the Norman kings and enforced by every lord of the manor, were incredibly strict. These laws were not about conservation in the modern sense. They were about preserving the lord's exclusive right to the hunt, a favorite pastime of the nobility. You have heard stories, whispered in the alehouse or by the fire on a winter's night, about what happens to poachers. The stories are likely exaggerated in the telling, but the core of truth is terrifying enough. Men caught with a bow and arrow in the woods or with snares set for hares could face mutilation. the chopping off of a hand or a finger to ensure they could never again draw a bowstring. Some were blinded. For killing a deer, the penalty could be death by hanging. The Lord's justice was swift and brutal, a public spectacle designed to remind everyone of their place. So you watch the deer for a moment longer, a silent, internal conflict playing out. The hunger in your belly wars with the fear in your heart, and the fear always wins. It has been drilled into you since birth. You know that even possessing a part of a deer, a piece of hide, an antler, could be enough to condemn you if the reeve were to find it. There is a whole class of specially bred dogs, the Allen, trained to track down not just deer, but the men who hunted them. The risk is simply too great. You lower your gaze from the deer and continue on your way. You are a peasant. Your animal protein comes not from the noble stag, but from much humbler sources. You might have a few chickens scratching in the dirt outside your hovel, their eggs a precious and welcome addition to your diet. If you are lucky, you might own a pig. Pigs were incredibly valuable, as they were, in a sense, self-foraging. They could be let loose in the woods during the autumn to feed on acorns and beech nuts, a practice known as pannage, for which you would, of course, have to pay a fee to the Lord. The slaughter of the family pig in late autumn was a crucial event, providing a wealth of meat that would be carefully salted and smoked to last through the lean winter months. Every part of the pig would be used. Nothing would be wasted. The meat, the fat, the organs, even the blood for making sausages. But these are domesticated animals, property that you own. The wild animals are a different matter entirely. While the deer are the most protected, even smaller game is off limits. Rabbits, introduced to England by the Normans, were often kept in managed warrens by the lord. Hares, squirrels, and game birds like pheasants were all his property. Catching one was poaching, plain and simple. What then could you legally catch? The answer is depressingly small. Historians believe peasants likely did engage in a great deal of low-level, opportunistic poaching, setting small, discreet snares for birds or rabbits, hoping to get away with it. But it was a constant gamble. The animals you could take without fear were the ones considered vermin, creatures that threatened the Lord's crops or game. Badgers, foxes, and weasels might be tolerated, though eating them was an act of desperation. Your gaze sweeps over the fields and hedgerows. You are not looking for four-legged creatures anymore. Your hunt is for smaller, slower, and safer prey. You might find a nest of field mice, or if you were truly desperate, you could dig for worms to use as bait for fishing later. The idea of eating a mouse is repulsive, but in the deepest, darkest days of winter, when the stores are gone and the fields are bare, you know that people have done worse to survive. The deer, having sensed your presence or perhaps just deciding to move on, bound away with effortless grace and disappear back into the shadows of the woods. They are gone, taking the impossible dream of a venison stew with them. You are left with the reality of your world, the heavy bread in your sack, the simmering pottage waiting for you at home, and the endless, patient search for the scraps and leavings that the Lord's world has left for you. The sight of the deer has not filled you with wonder at nature's beauty. It has filled you with a hollow ache, a visceral reminder of the vast, unbridgeable gulf that separates your life from that of your master. It is the taste of a hunger that food alone cannot satisfy, the hunger for freedom. With the dream of venison faded and the damp chill of the morning still clinging to you, your focus shifts to a more realistic and immediate goal. You turn your attention away from the vast, open fields and toward the tangled, messy boundaries that separate them. The hedgerows. These are not the neatly trimmed, ornamental hedges of a modern garden. They are thick, ancient, and chaotic barriers of thorny bushes, small trees, and climbing vines, planted centuries ago to mark property lines and keep livestock from wandering. To the Lord, they are functional fences. To you, they are a vital source of free food. You and your father part ways temporarily. He heads off toward the strip of land your family is assigned to work, to check on the progress of the winter wheat or to begin the laborious task of clearing drainage ditches. Your task is to patrol the hedgerows, your eyes scanning not for large game, but for the small, seasonal treasures they might hold. This is foraging in its most classic form, a patient search for nuts, berries, and fruits. It is a race against the birds, the insects, and the encroaching rot. Your tools for this hunt are simple: a cloth bag hanging from your belt and your own two hands, which are already calloused and scratched from a lifetime of such work. The ground beneath the hedge is a thick carpet of damp, decaying leaves, and you rustle through it with the toe of your shoe, hoping to uncover fallen nuts. Today, you are in luck. You found a small patch of hazel trees woven into the hedge, and the ground beneath is dotted with hazelnuts. Some have already been cracked open by squirrels, their shells lying empty like tiny wooden bowls. Others are still whole, their brown shells slick with morning dew. You kneel in the damp earth, your knees soaking up the cold, and begin to gather them, dropping them one by one into your bag. Each nut feels like a small, solid victory. They are a fantastic source of fat and protein, a dense package of energy that will be a welcome addition to your diet. They can be eaten raw, roasted in the embers of the fire to bring out their sweet flavor, or ground into a coarse flour to be mixed with the grain for your bread, adding richness and nutrition. But they are a seasonal luxury, available only for a short time in the autumn. You must gather as many as you can while they are here. As you work, you are mindful of the thorns. The hedgerow is a fortress of hawthorn and blackthorn, their sharp spines like tiny daggers ready to snag your clothes and scratch your skin. You move carefully, your body accustomed to navigating these thorny labyrinths. The blackthorn is a particularly valuable tree. In the spring, it offers a froth of white blossoms. In the autumn, after the first frost, it produces its fruit, small, dark purple berries called sloes. Right now, before the frost, they are incredibly tart and astringent, their sourness enough to make your mouth pucker uncontrollably. But you gather some anyway. You know that with patience, they can be made useful, steeped in water with a bit of precious honey. If you have any from your own bees, they can make a sour but vitamin-rich drink. They can also be used to make a type of fruit leather, or added to the pottage pot to lend a sharp, fruity note to the bland gruel. You continue your patrol along the tangled green wall. Your eyes are trained to spot the subtle variations in leaf shape and color. You find a crab apple tree, its small, gnarled branches offering up a few last, wrinkled fruits. They are nothing like the large, sweet apples of a modern supermarket. They are small, hard, and intensely sour. Biting into one raw would be an unpleasant experience, but you gather them eagerly. They will be cooked down, the heat softening them and mellowing their sourness, turning them into a thick, pulpy sauce that can be eaten with your bread or added to the pottage. They are also a source of pectin, which could help to set and preserve other fruits if you had sugar, which you do not. The most prized find in the hedgerow, especially earlier in the season, would have been blackberries. They are easy to identify, delicious, and grow in abundance. But now, so late in the year, most have rotted or been eaten by birds. You find a few late bloomers, their dark, plump drupelets glistening with moisture. You pop one into your mouth. The burst of sweetness is a startling and wonderful contrast to the blandness of your breakfast. It's a fleeting moment of pure pleasure, a tiny luxury in a day of toil. You save the rest, dropping them carefully into your bag. They are too precious to eat all at once. This type of foraging requires an immense amount of knowledge, passed down through generations. You know which berries are safe to eat and which are poisonous. You know the deadly nightshade with its alluring, shiny black berries, and you know to avoid it at all costs. You know that the bright red berries of the hawthorn, called haws, are edible but mostly stone, offering little flesh. This is not a casual hobby. It is a critical skill set for survival. Historians who study medieval diets emphasize the importance of these foraged foods, which provided essential vitamins and minerals often lacking in a grain-heavy diet. This peasant's pantry of the hedgerow was a buffer against malnutrition. Your bag is starting to feel heavy. It contains a good haul for a morning's work. A double handful of hazelnuts, a dozen sour crab apples, a small collection of sloes, and a precious few late-season blackberries. It's not a feast, but it is something. It is variety. It is flavor. It is the result of your own effort and knowledge, taken freely from the land without the need to bow to the Lord or pay a tax to the miller. As you straighten up, your back aching slightly from bending over, you look at the humble contents of your bag. This is the reality of your foraging. It is not a romantic stroll through a sun-dappled forest, filling a wicker basket with perfect, ripe fruit. It is a slow, methodical, and often painful search for anything and everything that can be eaten. It is the patient gathering of tiny, imperfect offerings from the margins of the cultivated world. And in its own way, it is a testament to your ingenuity, your ability to see a larder where others might only see a thorny fence. Your hunt through the hedgerows complete, you begin the walk back towards your hovel, your small bag of nuts and sour fruits bumping against your leg. The sky remains a uniform gray, but the air has lost some of its earlier bite. As you cut across a patch of uncultivated common land, a space where villagers are permitted to graze their livestock, your forager's eye remains active. You are always looking, always scanning the ground for anything of value. Your attention is drawn to the damp, shaded ground near a copse of birch trees. Here, clustered at the base of a rotting log, is a patch of mushrooms. You approach them with a caution that is deeply ingrained, a mixture of hope and primal fear. Fungi represent the ultimate forager's dilemma. They can be a gift from the earth, savory, meaty, and nutritious, a miraculous addition to the endless pottage, or they can be a swift and agonizing death in disguise. There is no middle ground. Every mushroom is a high-stakes gamble, and the price of being wrong is absolute. You kneel down for a closer look. You are not a mycologist with a field guide. Your knowledge is entirely traditional, passed down from your parents and grandparents, a collection of folk wisdom, rhymes, and hard-earned experience. You know to avoid any mushroom that is brightly colored, a rule of thumb that is not entirely reliable but serves as a good first line of defense. You know to be wary of any that have a particular shape or smell. You rely on a mental checklist of familiar, trusted species. The ones before you now are a familiar sight. They are a pale, brownish-gray color with delicate gills underneath their caps. You recognize them as a safe, common field mushroom. Gently, you pry one from the earth. It has a clean, earthy scent, reassuringly familiar. You break a piece of the cap and examine the flesh. There are no strange colors, no milky sap. Everything about it conforms to your memory of the good mushrooms. Still, you hesitate for a moment. You think of Old Man Hemlock, a figure from a village tale who grew sick and died after eating a stew made with mushrooms he'd picked in the wrong light. Was the story true, or was it just a cautionary tale told to frighten children into being careful? In a world with no doctors, no poison control centers, it hardly mattered. The fear was real enough. You decide these are safe. With your knife, a simple blade of iron with a wooden handle, you carefully cut the mushrooms at the base of the stem, leaving the root-like mycelium in the ground. This is important. It is a gesture of respect, a piece of practical magic to ensure that more mushrooms will grow here in the future. You are not just taking, you are helping to cultivate. You place the half-dozen mushrooms you've gathered into your bag, taking care to keep them separate from the fruits, nestled in a fold of the cloth. Their savory flavor will be a profound improvement to tonight's meal. The thought of it almost makes your mouth water. The world of fungi in the medieval mind was a mysterious one. Lacking the scientific understanding of how they reproduce, many people viewed them with superstition. They were often associated with witchcraft and fairies, thought to spring up overnight in circles where magical beings had danced. Some scholars suggest that the very name toadstool comes from the belief that toads, considered venomous and unclean creatures, sat on them and imbued them with their poison. This folklore, while not scientific, served a practical purpose. It instilled a healthy dose of fear and caution around eating unknown fungi, which likely saved many lives. Your mind wanders to the other side of this gamble, the poisons. You know to avoid the beautiful but deadly fly agaric, with its iconic red cap and white spots, often depicted in fairy tales. You know the stories of the destroying angel, a pure white mushroom so toxic that a single bite can lead to a slow and agonizing death, with symptoms appearing only after it is too late for any remedy. There were no remedies. If you made a mistake, your only recourse would be the village priest and prayers for your soul. There would be violent cramps, sickness, and a painful end. It is a terrifying thought, and it underscores the gravity of your decision just now. You have, in essence, bet your life on your knowledge of a single mushroom species. This is a part of your diet that is entirely invisible in most official records. A lord's accounts might list bushels of wheat and barrels of ale, but they will never mention a handful of foraged mushrooms. This is the hidden harvest, the food that filled the gaps. Historians who study the paleobotany of medieval sites sometimes find spores that give clues to the fungi people ate, but for the most part, it remains a shadowy and speculative part of their diet. It was a realm of knowledge dominated by women and common folk, a science of the soil that was never written down. Feeling a bit more confident, you continue your walk, but the thought of the poison mushrooms lingers. It's a reminder of the invisible dangers that surround you. The world is full of things that can harm you. The water from the wrong stream could give you a sickness of the gut. A small cut from a thorn could fester and poison your blood. And a simple, innocent-looking mushroom could contain enough poison to wipe out your entire family. There's no modern safety net here. No labels, no regulations, no emergency services. Your survival depends entirely on what you and your community have learned and remembered. You clutch the bag with the mushrooms a little tighter. It feels heavier now, weighted not just with their physical substance, but with the risk you have taken. But this is the nature of your existence. Life is a constant negotiation with risk, a balancing act between hunger and fear. Today, you have gambled and won. The reward will be a moment of savory, meaty pleasure in a world of bland subsistence. You have proven, once again, that you have the knowledge and the courage to wring sustenance from the perilous world around you. And this quiet, personal triumph is a meal in itself. You arrive back at the collection of hovels that make up your village just as the day's labor is pausing for the midday meal. The air, which was filled with the sounds of distant hammering and the lowing of oxen, settles into a relative quiet. Men and women are drifting in from the long strips of land, finding a dry spot on a stone wall, or simply sitting on the damp earth to eat their meager lunch. You see your father in the distance, sharing a piece of the hard, dark bread you packed this morning with another man. Their movements are slow, weary. This is not a relaxing lunch break. It is a functional refueling stop in a day defined by physical exertion. You, however, are not headed for the fields. Your foraging for the day is done. But there is another kind of gathering that takes place at a different time of year, one that requires a different kind of patience. Your mind drifts to the end of summer, just a few weeks ago. The image is clear and vivid. The great harvest. For a few frantic weeks, the entire village works from sunup to sundown, a communal effort to bring in the grain that will sustain you through the winter. The fields are alive with the rhythmic swish of scythes and sickles, the air thick with dust, and the smell of cut straw. It is the most critical time of the year, a period of intense labor that leaves your muscles screaming and your hands blistered. But you are not a reaper. As a woman, or perhaps a child, your role in this great drama is different but no less important. Your job is to be a gleaner. You follow behind the team of male reapers, your eyes fixed on the ground. The reapers, for all their skill, are not perfect. Stalks of wheat, barley, or rye are missed. Individual ears of grain are dropped and left behind on the stubbled field. This is what you are here for. This is the ghost of the harvest, and it is your job to gather it. Gleaning was a legally protected right for the poor in many parts of medieval Europe, a form of institutionalized charity rooted in biblical tradition. The Lord could not forbid you from gathering what was left behind after his reapers had passed. It was a lifeline, a way for the most vulnerable members of the community to secure their own small supply of grain. But it was far from easy. You spend the entire day bent at the waist, your back aching, your eyes straining to distinguish the pale gold of a fallen stalk from the dry stubble of the field. It is painstaking, finger-numbing work. You remember the feeling of the sun beating down on your neck, the scratch of the stubble against your ankles. You compete with the birds, who are also eager to feast on the fallen grain. You also compete with other gleaners. There is a quiet, desperate urgency to the work. Every stalk you find is one that someone else cannot have. You tie your collected stalks into a small bundle or sheaf, and at the end of the day, you carry it home on your head. It is a heavy, awkward load, but you carry it with a sense of pride. This grain is yours. It is not part of the tithe you must pay to the church, nor part of the rent you owe the Lord. It is free, earned entirely by your own patient labor. Over the weeks of the harvest, you might accumulate a surprisingly large pile of gleaned grain, but it is not ready to be used. You must then spend countless hours in the evenings, by the dim light of the fire, thrashing it. You beat the stalks against a hard floor or with a small, hand-held flail to separate the grains from the chaff. Then you must winnow it, tossing it into the air from a wide, shallow basket, letting the wind carry away the lighter chaff while the heavier grains fall back into the basket. It is a dusty, messy, repetitive task. Each step of the process is laborious and inefficient compared to the larger-scale operations of the manor, but it is essential. The small pile of grain you produce through this process might be enough to feed your family for a few weeks, a crucial buffer during the leanest months of winter. So before this great story continues, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're enjoying our journey together. Your support means the world. Now back in the present moment, standing outside your hovel, you are reminded that the fruits of that gleaning are now part of your winter stores. The grain you so painstakingly collected is in a sack in the corner of your home, waiting to be ground by hand, with a small stone quern that is technically illegal for you to own, and turned into pottage or flatbreads. The memory of the harvest is a stark reminder of the social hierarchy. You live off the leftovers. You follow in the wake of the powerful, gathering the scraps they leave behind. First, the Lord's reapers take the lion's share. Then the church takes its tenth. And only then do you get to scratch and claw for the ghost of what remains. This system of gleaning highlights a fascinating aspect of the medieval mindset. There was a clear understanding of social obligation and a framework for providing for the poor. Yet it was structured in a way that reinforced the existing power dynamic. The Lord, by allowing gleaning, was seen as charitable, yet the system itself was built on his ownership of the land and the labor of the peasants. Historians still debate whether these practices were primarily driven by genuine Christian charity or by a pragmatic need to keep the peasant population alive and capable of working the land the following year. Perhaps it was a mixture of both. You look down at your own hands. Even now, weeks after the harvest, you can see the faint, silvery lines of old scars from sharp stalks and the ingrained dirt that no amount of washing can seem to remove. They are the hands of a gleaner, a forager, a survivor. They are a testament to the fact that sustenance can be found not just in the grand, sweeping gestures of the harvest, but in the small, patient, and often overlooked act of picking up what has been left behind. Your survival is written in these small acts of reclamation. It is a quiet, resilient defiance, a life assembled from the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And as you prepare to duck back into the smoky interior of your home, you carry that resilience with you, just as you once carried the heavy sheaf of gleaned wheat on your head. You push aside the heavy leather flap that serves as your door and step back into the single, smoky room of your hovel. The fire in the central hearth is burning low, and your mother is not here. She is likely out on a similar errand, perhaps checking on the chickens or visiting a neighbor. The air is still and thick with the familiar sense of wood smoke and damp earth. Your eyes adjust to the gloom, and you make your way to the corner where your family's few stores are kept. You add your morning's haul, the nuts, the sour apples, the precious mushrooms, to the small but varied collection of foraged goods. Your mind, still on the theme of gathering from the common lands, turns to another essential category of foraged items: herbs. Just outside your door, in the small patch of cultivated ground that is your garden, you grow the essentials: onions, leeks, peas, and perhaps some cabbage. But dotting the landscape in the verges of the pathways on the unplowed common land and along the banks of the stream is a wild, untamed garden, free for the taking. And you, like every woman in the village, possess the knowledge to read it. This is not the herb garden of a modern chef, focused on nuanced flavors like basil or rosemary. Your search for herbs is driven by two primary needs: preservation and medicine. Flavor is often a secondary, if welcome, benefit. You have a small collection of dried herbs hanging from the roof beams, their brittle leaves rustling softly when a draft moves through the room. There is a bundle of wild garlic, its pungent, oniony scent still faintly detectable. You gather it in the spring. Its long green leaves a welcome, fresh taste after a winter of dried and salted foods. Added to the pottage, it provides a powerful, savory kick. Next to it hangs a bunch of yarrow. Its feathery leaves and clustered white flowers are a common sight along any path. You know it by another name: nosebleed. You have been taught that stuffing a fresh leaf into a nostril can help stop a nosebleed, and a tea made from the dried leaves is good for fevers. Nearby is a bunch of dried mint, gathered from a damp patch near the stream. Its clean, sharp scent is a pleasant aroma in the otherwise stale air of the hovel. A tea from its leaves can soothe an upset stomach, a common complaint in a world with questionable water and a monotonous diet. The line between food and medicine is almost non-existent. Every plant has a purpose, and often multiple purposes. The St. John's wort you gather, with its cheerful yellow flowers, is believed to ward off evil spirits if hung over a doorway, but a tincture made from it is also used to dress wounds and soothe aches. Historians find this intersection of folklore, medicine, and cuisine fascinating. Without access to professional physicians, who served only the wealthy, the village wise woman, or simply the matriarch of a family was the doctor, and her pharmacy was the fields and forests. This knowledge was a vital inheritance, passed from mother to daughter, a crucial tool for family survival. You think of the herbs you would gather not for their dramatic medicinal effects, but for their more humble contributions to the kitchen. Wild marjoram, sage, and thyme could all be found growing wild. Their flavors were likely more pungent and less refined than their cultivated modern cousins, but they were invaluable. A handful of these thrown into the perpetual pottage pot could transform the bland gruel into something almost savory, masking the taste of slightly off ingredients and adding a layer of complexity to the one-note meal. One of the most important herbs you gather is not a leafy green, but a flower, the elder flower. In the late spring, the elder bushes in the hedgerows are heavy with huge, plate-like blossoms that fill the air with a sweet, heady perfume. You gather these flowers and dry them carefully. They can be used to make a soothing tea for coughs and colds, but they can also be dipped in a simple batter of flour and water and fried in a bit of lard, creating a sweet, fragrant fritter, an incredible and rare treat. Later in the season, the bush produces elderberries, which, when cooked, make a dark, rich, and supposedly immune-boosting syrup or wine. The knowledge required is immense and specific. You know to gather nettles, but only the young, tender leaves in the spring, and only after boiling them thoroughly to remove their sting. The resulting mush is surprisingly nutritious, packed with iron and vitamins, a vital spring tonic after a long winter. You know which roots can be dug up and boiled, like burdock, which tastes earthy and slightly sweet. You know the difference between the edible leaves of the dandelion and other, similar-looking plants that could be harmful. There is, of course, an academic debate about how effective many of these herbal remedies truly were. While some plants, like willow bark, a natural source of salicylic acid, the basis for aspirin, have scientifically proven medicinal properties, others likely worked through the placebo effect or were simply ineffective. But in your world, belief is a powerful medicine in itself. The act of gathering a specific herb, preparing it according to tradition, and administering it with care is a way of asserting control in a world where so much is uncontrollable. It is an act of hope, a ritual against the chaos of sickness and disease. You reach up and touch the brittle leaves of the dried yarrow. The scent is faint, dusty, and herbal. This is your medicine cabinet and your spice rack all in one. It represents hours of patient foraging, of knowing the right time of year to harvest, the right part of the plant to take, and the right way to prepare it. It is a quiet testament to a hidden science, a body of knowledge that was essential for life, yet completely overlooked by the literate men who wrote the histories. Your pantry is not just a collection of ingredients. It is a library of ancient wisdom, a shield against sickness, and a small but potent weapon against the relentless blandness of your daily food. The echoes of this knowledge persist today in herbal medicine and folk remedies, a faint but unbroken thread connecting your smoky hovel to the modern world. The midday quiet begins to break as people finish their sparse meals and prepare to return to their work. The sound of a cart creaking its way down the village track draws your attention. You glance out the open doorway and see your father walking away from the hovel, heading not back to the fields, but down the path that leads to the river. This signals a different kind of food gathering, one that requires a different set of tools and a different kind of patience. You decide to follow, your curiosity piqued. The river that flows past your village is not a majestic, clear-running stream. It is a slow, muddy, and murky body of water, its banks overgrown with reeds and rushes. This is not a place for sport fishing with a rod and fly. This is a working river, a source of water, a place to wash clothes, and if you are lucky, a source of food. But just like the woods, the river is not entirely yours. The best fishing rights, especially for prized fish like salmon or trout, belong to the lord of the manor. Special weirs and nets are constructed to catch these fish for his table. For you to be caught taking a salmon would be a crime almost as serious as poaching a deer. So you are not fishing for salmon. You are after the humbler inhabitants of the river's ecosystem. Your father is carrying a large, conical basket woven from willow branches. This is an eel trap. Eels were a hugely important part of the medieval diet, especially for peasants. They were fatty, rich in calories, and plentiful in the slow-moving rivers and marshes of the landscape. They were also a permitted catch. The Lord had little interest in these slippery, snake-like creatures. You watch as your father wades into the cold, brown water up to his knees. He finds a spot where the current moves slowly, near a thick bed of reeds. He shoves the narrow end of the trap deep into the mud, securing it with stones. The wide mouth of the trap faces downstream. Inside there might be a bit of bait, some animal guts or a crushed worm. But often the trap relies on the eel's natural curiosity and its instinct to seek shelter in dark, narrow spaces. The design of the trap is simple but ingenious. The entrance is an inverted cone of woven willow, making it easy for an eel to swim in, but almost impossible for it to find its way out. He will leave the trap here and check it tomorrow morning. It is a passive form of hunting, a game of hope and river currents. While your father sets the main trap, you engage in a more immediate and active form of fishing. You have a small net, not much bigger than a dinner plate, attached to a long pole. You find a spot along the bank where a small tributary trickles into the main river, creating a shallow, silty delta. Here you hunt for minnows and other tiny fish that swarm in the shallows. You plunge the net into the water, scraping it along the bottom and lift it out. The catch is meager. A few tiny, silver fish, no bigger than your finger, flap desperately in the net, tangled with mud and rotting leaves. You carefully pick them out and drop them into a clay pot you brought with you. It is slow, repetitive work. More often than not, the net comes up empty. But after an hour of patient scooping and swishing, you have a small collection of tiny fish. What do you do with them? They are too small to be scaled or gutted in any meaningful way. The answer lies, as it always does, back in the pottage pot. The entire catch will be thrown in, bones and all. They will simmer for hours until they dissolve completely into the gruel, their bodies adding a subtle, fishy flavor and, more importantly, a boost of calcium and other minerals from their bones. This is a common theme in your diet, using every last part of an animal or plant, ensuring that nothing is wasted. Sometimes, if you were lucky, You might catch a slightly larger fish, like a perch or a roach. This would be a real treat. It would be gutted and cooked directly on the embers of the fire, its skin charring and its flesh steaming inside. But such a catch is rare. Mostly, you rely on the eels and the tiny pottage fish. Another valuable resource from the riverbank is freshwater mussels or clams. You wade into the shallows, feeling with your bare feet in the cold, silken mud for the hard, oblong shapes of their shells. When you find one, you dig it out with your toes and reach down to grab it. They are a good source of protein, but also a risky one. You know that mussels from the wrong part of the river, or gathered at the wrong time of year, can make you violently ill. There is that familiar gamble again, a constant weighing of hunger against the risk of sickness. Historians studying the bones and refuse pits of medieval villages have confirmed the importance of these freshwater resources. They find the tiny, delicate bones of small fish and the shells of mussels, evidence of this humble, muddy harvest. It shows a population that was incredibly adept at exploiting every available ecological niche, no matter how ungladable it might seem to a modern palate. There's a scholarly debate on just how much of the peasant diet came from these freshwater sources, with some arguing it was a daily supplement, and others suggesting it was more of a fallback for when other foods were scarce. You look at the river, its surface brown and opaque. It is not a beautiful, natural paradise. It is a resource, a workplace, and a potential source of danger. The water itself, drawn for drinking, could carry disease. A slip on the muddy bank could lead to a broken bone. Yet, it offers life. It sustains the willows you use for baskets, the reeds you might use for flooring, and the tiny creatures that supplement your diet. As your father finishes securing his eel trap, he wades back to the bank, his legs caked in mud. He gives you a nod, acknowledging your small pot of minnows. There is no praise, just a shared understanding of the work. You have both done your part to coax a little more sustenance from the world. You turn away from the river, leaving the trap to its silent, hopeful work in the dark water. The potential of a fatty eel for tomorrow's meal is a comforting thought. It is another small investment in the future, another thread of hope woven into the fabric of your survival, pulled from the mud and murk of the river's humble offerings. Leaving the riverbank behind, you and your father begin the slow trudge back toward the village. The small pot of minnows feels heavier than it should, a meager reward for an hour's work. Your path takes you along the edge of a field that is lying fallow this year, part of the three-field crop rotation system that governs the agricultural calendar. The field is not empty. It is overgrown with a riot of what a modern gardener would call weeds. But to your trained eye, this green carpet is not a nuisance. It is another potential pantry. Your focus shifts from the sky and the water to the earth beneath your feet. You are now hunting for the most humble foods of all, edible weeds and roots. This is the diet of last resort, the food of desperation, but also a surprisingly reliable source of nutrition that is always available. You are not just a forager of fruits and nuts. You are a connoisseur of the overlooked and the unwanted. You pause and point to a familiar, low-growing plant with broad leaves and a distinctive central spike of seeds. It is plantain, a common weed that grows in any disturbed soil. You know that its young leaves, when they are tender in the spring, can be boiled and eaten like cabbage. They are bland and slightly bitter, but they are edible. More importantly, you know that a crushed plant and leaf can be made into a poultice to soothe bee stings and small wounds. Another example of the blurred line between food and medicine. Your father, seeing where your attention is, gestures with his chin toward a different patch of green. It's a plant you know well and avoid brushing against, the stinging nettle. To the uninitiated, it is a painful pest, but you know its secret. In the spring, before the plant flowers, you would gather the very top leaves, using a cloth to protect your hands. The sting is neutralized by cooking, and what remains is a powerhouse of nutrition. Boiled nettles, or nettle pudding, was a staple of the spring diet, a vital source of vitamins and iron that helped people recover from the privations of winter. Historians often call this spring sickness the scurvy, and nutrient-rich greens like nettles were a key preventative. You continue your walk, your eyes scanning the ground. You see dandelions. Today, they are a stubborn lawn pest. In your world, every part of the dandelion is useful. The leaves are a bitter green, good for boiling in the pottage. The root, when roasted and ground, can be used to make a dark, bitter drink. A caffeine-free coffee substitute you never knew you needed because you've never heard of coffee. The yellow flowers can even be used to make a type of wine, a sweet and golden luxury that would be a cause for celebration. Your gaze catches on a thistle, its prickly leaves and purple flower a formidable sight. Most people would see it as nothing but a spiky menace. But you know that if you are patient and careful, you can peel the tough, spiny skin from the stalk to reveal a tender, watery core that can be eaten raw. It is a lot of work for a small reward. But when you are hungry, the calculation is different. Perhaps the most important root you might dig for is not from a weed, but from a cultivated plant that has been left behind. After the pea and bean harvest, some of the plant's roots would be left in the ground. You could go back and dig for them. But even more valuable were the roots of wilder things. You might dig for the long, tapering root of the burdock, which you would have to scrub clean and boil for a long time to make it tender. Its earthy, slightly sweet flavor is a welcome change. This practice of eating weeds and roots is what many scholars refer to as famine foods. These were the foods people turned to when the grain stores ran out before the next harvest, a period known as the Hungry Gap in early summer. During these desperate times, people ate things that would be unthinkable in times of plenty. They ate boiled tree bark, the ground-up flour from acorns, after a long process of leaching out the bitter tannins, and the roots of ferns. There is archaeological evidence from some medieval sites of people eating the seeds of noxious weeds like corn cockle, a poisonous plant that grows in wheat fields. Grinding it up with the wheat was a way to stretch the flour, but it could cause sickness. It was a terrible choice to have to make, a little poison or starvation. You think about the taste of these foods. They are overwhelmingly bitter, earthy, and astringent. These are not flavors of pleasure. They are the flavors of survival. The bitterness comes from the plant's natural chemical defenses, compounds designed to stop animals from eating them. Your people, through generations of trial and error, have figured out how to overcome these defenses, usually through prolonged boiling, which leaches out the unpleasant or harmful compounds. This reliance on weeds and roots paints a grim picture of the medieval peasant diet, and for good reason. Life was precarious. A bad harvest caused by drought or too much rain could plunge a whole community into famine. However, it also showcases an incredible resilience and an encyclopedic knowledge of the natural world. To look at a field of weeds and see a larder requires a completely different way of seeing the world. It's an intimacy with the environment that has been almost entirely lost in the modern era. We have specialists, botanists, pharmacists, chefs. But for you, all of these roles are combined into one. You are the expert on your own survival. You reach the village, your mind filled with the earthy tastes and textures of these humble plants. You have not gathered any today, but you are comforted by the knowledge that they are there, waiting. They are your insurance policy, your emergency rations provided by the earth itself. It is a strange kind of wealth, the knowledge of how to stay alive on what others discard. This deep, practical wisdom is your inheritance, more valuable than any coin, a legacy of survival written in the language of roots, leaves, and weeds. Back inside the hovel, the fruits of your various foraging trips are starting to accumulate. You have the bag of nuts and sour apples from the hedgerow, the precious mushrooms from the common land, and the small pot of minnows from the river. Your mother has returned, and she nods in approval at your contributions. But gathering the food is only half the battle. Now comes the equally important challenge, making it last. In your world, there is no refrigerator to keep food fresh, no freezer to store the bounty of one season for another. The rhythm of your life is dictated by the constant threat of spoilage. Microbes and decay are your invisible enemies, always working to reclaim the calories you have worked so hard to gather. Therefore, a significant portion of your time and energy is devoted to the arts of preservation. This is not about canning jams for a country fair. This is a matter of life and death. The most important preservative you have is salt. Salt is so valuable that it has been used as currency in some cultures, and the word salary itself comes from the Latin word for salt. But you don't have a shaker of fine, iodized salt on your table. Salt is a precious, expensive commodity. It might be sourced from distant coastal salt pans or from inland brine springs, and by the time it reaches your village, its price is high. You use it with extreme care. A small bag of coarse, grayish salt is kept in a dry place near the hearth, and a pinch is used to flavor the pottage. Its real importance, however, is in preserving meat. You think back to the autumn when the family pig was slaughtered. That was a time of frenzied activity. After the animal was butchered, large cuts of pork were packed in salt in a wooden barrel or a large earthenware crock. This process, called salt curing, draws the water out of the meat, making it an inhospitable environment for the bacteria that cause decay. The heavily salted bacon and ham that result can last for months, providing a vital source of protein and fat through the lean winter. A small piece of this salt pork, simmered in the pottage pot, would release its salt and meaty flavor, seasoning the entire meal while providing a few precious bites of meat. Another primary method of preservation you rely on is drying. You can see this in practice all around your small home. Bunches of herbs hang from the rafters, their moisture slowly evaporating in the smoky air. You do the same with mushrooms, threading them onto a string and hanging them near the fire until they are hard and shrunken. Dried mushrooms can be rehydrated in water or simply tossed into the simmering pottage, where they will plump up and release their flavor. Peas and beans from your garden are also left to dry on the vine before being harvested and stored in cloth sacks. They become hard as stones but will last for more than a year, ready to be soaked and boiled when needed. Fruits, like the crab apples you gathered, can also be preserved through drying. You would slice them into thin rings, core and all, and lay them out on a wooden board near the fire. The process takes days and requires constant vigilance to prevent them from molding. The resulting dried apple rings are chewy, intensely sour, and make a good, energy-rich snack to take into the fields. Then there is smoking. Your hovel, with its central, open hearth and no chimney, is essentially a giant smokehouse. While this makes the air inside constantly acrid and stings your eyes, it has the unintended benefit of preserving anything hanging from the ceiling. The smoke contains natural antibacterial compounds and helps to form a protective layer over foods. Small fish, like the ones you caught, could be gutted and hung in the smoky eaves of the roof to slowly cure. The family's precious side of bacon, after being salted, would also be hung in the smoke, which added another layer of flavor and preservative power. Fermentation is another powerful tool in your arsenal, though you wouldn't understand the microbiology of it. You just know that it works. You know that cabbage, when shredded, salted, and packed tightly into a crock, will transform over several weeks into a sour, tangy food that will not spoil. This sauerkraut-like dish is a vital source of vitamins in the winter. You also know the magic of turning milk into cheese. Fresh milk spoils within a day, but by adding rennet, an enzyme from a calf's stomach, and pressing the resulting curds, you can create a hard, dry cheese that will last for months. It is a dense, portable, and long-lasting form of protein. All of these methods, salting, drying, smoking, and fermenting, are your weapons in the war against rot. They are your technologies for time-shifting calories, for moving the abundance of the autumn harvest into the scarcity of the deep winter. The success of a household is measured not just by how much it can grow or gather, but by how well it can preserve. Historians who study food preservation techniques note their profound impact on human civilization, allowing communities to settle in one place and survive seasonal variations in the food supply. But these methods come at a cost to flavor and nutrition. Salted meat is incredibly salty and must often be soaked in water before it is palatable. Dried foods lose some of their vitamins. The taste of your diet is overwhelmingly dominated by salt, smoke, and sourness. Freshness is a rare and seasonal luxury. The burst of sweetness from that blackberry you ate earlier was so powerful precisely because it was a taste of the immediate, unprocessed world, a stark contrast to the preserved foods that form the backbone of your diet. You look at the small pile of fresh mushrooms. You know they must be used quickly within a day or two or they will spoil. This is the choice you constantly face. eat it now or process it for later. Your mother makes the decision. Some will go into tonight's pottage, a rare treat of fresh flavor. The rest she begins to prepare for drying, a wise investment in a future meal. It is a perfect illustration of your life. A portion for today, a portion for tomorrow. A constant, careful balancing act between immediate needs and future security. Your ingenuity in preservation is the silent, unsung foundation of your survival. Weeks pass. The relentless cycle of short days and long, cold nights continues. The food you so carefully foraged and preserved in the autumn is your nightly reality. The familiar flavors of salt, smoke, and sourness mingling in the perpetual pottage pot. Life is a steady, predictable rhythm of work, eat, and sleep. But tonight, there is a subtle shift in the air, a crackle of anticipation. It is a rare occasion. Your father has decided to spend a few of the precious coins he earned from selling a bit of surplus wool at the market. You are going to the alehouse. The alehouse is not a cozy, cheerful pub with a polished bar and friendly staff. In your village, it is likely just a room in someone's house, designated for the brewing and selling of ale. The woman who runs it, the alewife, is often a figure of both importance and suspicion in the community. She provides a vital social hub and a beloved drink, but is also frequently stereotyped in popular tales as being dishonest, watering down her ale or overcharging her customers. There are no health inspectors or regulations here, only reputation. You walk through the muddy village track in the deep twilight. The alehouse is marked not by a fancy sign, but by a simple ale stake, a long pole, perhaps with a bush tied to the end of it, projecting from the front of the house. This is the universal sign that a new batch of ale is ready. You push through the door and are hit by a wall of noise, heat, and smell. The room is crowded, dimly lit by a few tallow candles and the light from a large hearth. The air is thick with the sweet, malty scent of ale, mingled with wood smoke, sweat, and the aroma of unwashed bodies packed into a tight space. It is loud, filled with the boisterous talk and laughter of men and women unwinding after a week of hard labor. Your father finds a space on a crowded bench near the wall. He hands a coin to the alewife, and she returns with 2 clay mugs of ale. The ale is the main event. It is not the clear, fizzy, hop-heavy beer of the modern world. Hops were not widely used as a preservative in England until later in the Middle Ages. This ale is thick, cloudy, and slightly sweet. It is made from fermented barley, and because the brewing process was not sterile, it likely has a low alcohol content and a slightly sour or cidery tang from wild yeasts. For you, it is not just an intoxicant, it is liquid bread. Ale was a core part of the medieval diet, a significant source of calories and B vitamins. It was often safer to drink than water from a questionable stream. Even children would drink a weaker, small ale. You take a sip. It's lukewarm, sweet, and malty, with a slightly gritty texture from the unfiltered grain. It's filling and warming, a welcome sensation on a cold night. You drink it slowly, savoring the treat. Ale is a social lubricant, and around you the villagers are talking, gambling with knucklebones and telling stories. It is one of the few places where the rigid social structures of the day could relax, just a little. But your father has decided on an even rarer indulgence. He signals to the alewife again and orders a bowl of her stew. This is a huge luxury. To eat a meal you did not cook yourself, made with ingredients you did not grow or forage, is almost unheard of. The alewife disappears into a back room and returns with a wooden bowl filled with a thick, dark, bubbling concoction. She hands it to you with a chunk of bread. You look into the bowl with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. What exactly is in this stew? There are no menus, no ingredient lists. You are putting your trust entirely in the alewife. The stew is known colloquially as potluck, which for you is not a charming term for a shared meal, but a literal description. You are eating whatever luck has put in the pot that day. You take a tentative bite. The stew is hot and surprisingly flavorful. It is much richer than your pottage at home, likely made with a base of meat drippings and bones. You can identify chunks of root vegetables, turnips, carrots, and some barley. But there are also pieces of meat. What kind of meat is it? It's impossible to say. It is tender from long, slow cooking. It could be beef from an old ox that was no longer fit for plowing. It could be mutton from a sheep that died of sickness. It could be the remains of the Lord's feast, the leftover bones and gristle bought for a pittance from the castle kitchen. There are whispers and jokes that some unscrupulous sellers might use meat from animals you'd rather not think about, like cats or dogs. This is likely just a slanderous rumor, but the uncertainty hangs in the air. This is the medieval equivalent of a questionable takeaway. There are no online reviews to consult, no food safety ratings on the door. You eat it and you hope for the best. The stew is also likely to contain umbles, the heart, liver, and other internal organs of an animal. The phrase to eat humble pie comes from this, a pie made of the deer's umbles, which was eaten by the servants, while the Lord ate the prime venison. These organ meats, while unappetizing to some modern palates, are incredibly rich in vitamins and minerals. As you eat, you listen to the conversations around you. A man is complaining about the reeve. Two women are gossiping about a recent marriage. A traveler is telling an exaggerated tale of his journey from the next town. This is the village information hub, the social media of its day. You are not just consuming ale and stew. You are consuming news, stories, and a sense of community. This is a rare break from the isolation of your family unit and the monotony of your daily labor. Despite the questionable origin of the stew, it is delicious, or at least, it is a delicious change. It is a taste of someone else's cooking, someone else's life. You finish the bowl, wiping it clean with your bread, feeling full and warm. The ale has made your head feel light and your limbs heavy. The noise of the room seems to buzz pleasantly in your ears. This rare visit to the alehouse is a vital part of your psychological survival. It is a reminder that life is not just about the endless cycle of work and pottage. It is also about community, shared laughter, and the simple, profound pleasure of a warm meal and a mug of ale on a cold night. It's a small, flickering candle of joy in the vast darkness of a peasant's life. The warmth and hazy cheer of the alehouse fade into memory as you step back out into the sharp, cold air of the night. The walk home is a quiet one, the single mug of ale leaving you feeling sleepy and content. Back in the hovel, You curl up on your straw mattress, the familiar sense of home a comforting blanket. The rare treat of the tavern stew and the communal buzz of the alehouse underscore the usual reality of your existence, which is governed by a much more powerful and unforgiving force, the rhythm of feast and famine. Your life is a pendulum, swinging slowly and predictably between times of relative abundance and times of desperate scarcity. This is a reality shaped not by choice, but by the seasons and the agricultural calendar. You are living in a world that is either green and growing or brown and sleeping, and your diet reflects this dramatic shift. Your mind drifts back to the late summer and early autumn. This is the time of feasting. The harvest is in, bringing with it a bounty of grain. The small garden plot is overflowing with its produce. Beans, peas, onions, and cabbages are all fresh and plentiful. The hedgerows are heavy with berries and nuts, and the orchards offer up their sour but useful fruits. The animals, too, are at their fattest after a summer of grazing. The slaughter of the family pig in the autumn provides a temporary glut of fresh meat, a rare and joyous occasion. For a few precious weeks, your pottage is thick with fresh vegetables, and you might even have a small piece of roasted pork to eat with your bread. This is the peak of the pendulum's swing. During this time, the work is hard, but the reward is immediate and tangible. You eat well. Your body stores up fat and nutrients, a biological preparation for the lean times you know are coming. There is a sense of security, of full larders and a temporary victory against hunger. This period is marked by celebrations. Harvest festivals, though often co-opted by the church, have their roots in ancient pagan traditions of giving thanks for the earth's bounty. It is a time of community, of shared relief that the harvest has been successful once again. But as autumn deepens into winter, the pendulum begins its slow, inexorable swing back toward scarcity. The days grow shorter, the air colder. The fresh produce from the garden is gone, and you become reliant on the foods you have so carefully preserved. The taste of freshness is replaced by the taste of salt, smoke, and fermentation. Your diet narrows, becoming more monotonous. The pottage is still filling, but it lacks the variety and vibrancy of the autumn meals. It is now made with dried peas, stored root vegetables, and the ever-present salted pork. Then comes the real test, the late winter and early spring. This is the bottom of the pendulum's swing, the time of famine. This period, from roughly February to April, is known as the hungry gap. The food stores from the previous harvest are dwindling, running dangerously low. The salted meat is mostly gone, the dried fruits have been eaten, and the sacks of grain are becoming lighter. Yet the new season's crops have not yet begun to grow. The fields are bare and frozen. The foraging is at its worst. There are no nuts or berries, and even the edible weeds have yet to sprout. This is the time when your diet becomes truly grim. You eat the food of survival. The bread might be bulked out with ground-up dried beans or even sawdust. The pottage becomes a thin, watery gruel. This is when you would turn to the famine foods you thought of before. Boiled nettles as soon as they appear, bitter roots dug from the frozen ground, perhaps even tree bark. Hunger becomes a constant companion, a dull ache in your stomach that never truly goes away. People grow thin and weak, tempers fray. The fear of starvation is a real and present danger. Historians and archaeologists can see this cycle written on the very bones of medieval people. Studies of skeletal remains often show lines of arrested growth in the teeth and bones, evidence of cyclical malnutrition during childhood. These lines mark the annual hungry gap, a physical scar left by the season of famine. It is a stark, scientific confirmation of this brutal rhythm of life. Your body itself becomes a record of the pendulum's swing. This cycle of feast and famine had a profound psychological impact. It fostered a mindset of deep-seated anxiety about the future, but also one of incredible resilience and foresight. You learn to celebrate the good times without becoming complacent, and to endure the bad times with a stoic patience. You understood, in a way that is difficult for a modern person to grasp, that abundance was temporary and scarcity was inevitable. Your entire system of food preservation was a testament to this understanding, a sophisticated strategy for smoothing out the violent peaks and troughs of the food supply. As you lie there in the dark, you can feel the truth of this cycle in your own body. You are not starving now. It is still early winter and the stores are holding. But you are not feasting either. You are in the long, slow middle of the pendulum's swing, carefully rationing what you have, making it last. The memory of the rich tavern stew is a pleasant anomaly, a brief, joyful leap off the predictable track of your diet. You pull the thin woolen blanket tighter around you. The sleep that comes is not the easy, untroubled sleep of the well-fed and secure. It is the deep, heavy sleep of the laborer, a necessary respite before another day of work. And in your dreams, you do not dream of feasts or fantasies. You dream of simple things: a full pot, a warm fire, and the first green shoots of spring, a promise that the pendulum will, eventually, begin its slow swing back toward the light. The seasons turn, the pendulum swings. You have endured the hungry gap of late winter, survived on thin pottage and the first bitter greens of spring. Now, the world is greening again. The days are longer, the sun has a little warmth in it, and the cycle of foraging and farming begins anew. You have survived another year, and as you go about your daily tasks, eating your monotonous but life-sustaining meals, a modern observer might look at your diet and see only hardship and deprivation. They would see the lack of variety, the constant threat of scarcity, and the unappetizing nature of many of your staples. And they would not be wrong, but they would also be missing a crucial part of the story. Paradoxically, despite the boredom and the grit, your foraged and farmed diet was, in many ways, surprisingly nutritious. In the strange arithmetic of historical nutrition, your monotonous peasant fare often delivered a better balance of essential nutrients than the diet of the wealthy lord in his castle. It is a conclusion that defies romantic notions of aristocratic feasts and peasant squalor, but one that is increasingly supported by historical and scientific analysis. Let's start with the foundation of your diet, the pottage. That ever-present, bubbling cauldron of gruel, for all its blandness, was a nutritional powerhouse. It was based on whole grains like barley and rye. Unlike the finely milled white flour favored by the rich, your coarse flour retained the bran and the germ of the grain. This meant your bread and pottage were packed with dietary fiber, B vitamins, and essential minerals like iron and magnesium. The constant addition of vegetables like onions, leeks, and cabbage, along with peas and beans, provided a steady stream of vitamins and plant-based protein. The little bits of salted meat or fish, while scarce, added crucial fats and amino acids. It was, in essence, a slow-cooked, whole-food meal consumed twice a day, every day. Now compare this to the diet of the Lord. He ate vast quantities of meat, venison, beef, swan, peacock, often roasted and served with rich, heavy sauces. His bread was made from the finest, whitest wheat flour, a symbol of his status. He consumed large amounts of sugar and honey in elaborate desserts. While this sounds luxurious, it was, in reality, a diet dangerously high in saturated fat and simple carbohydrates, and shockingly low in fiber and certain vitamins. The lack of fresh vegetables, which were often considered peasant food, could lead to diseases like scurvy. Gout, a painful inflammatory condition caused by a rich diet, was famously a disease of the aristocracy. In essence, the Lord was eating the medieval equivalent of a modern fast food diet, while you were on a strict, if involuntary, whole foods regimen. The reliance on foraged foods also gave your diet a hidden nutritional edge. The wild greens like nettles and dandelions were packed with more vitamins and minerals than many cultivated vegetables. The nuts and seeds you gathered from the hedgerow provided healthy fats and proteins. The small, bony fish you threw into the pottage pot contributed a vital dose of calcium. Historians who specialize in food history, like Massimo Montanari, argue that the peasants' ability to exploit a wide variety of ecological niches created a diverse food system, even if the daily meals seemed monotonous. Of course, this is not to romanticize your condition. Your diet was still precarious. A failed harvest could lead to genuine starvation. You were chronically short on calories, especially during the hungry gap, which stunted growth and made you vulnerable to disease. Your food was often contaminated with grit from millstones, which wore down your teeth over time, leading to painful abscesses and infections. A modern nutritionist would be horrified by the lack of food safety and the constant risk of consuming spoiled or contaminated food. There is a significant scholarly debate on the overall health and life expectancy of medieval peasants. While traditional views painted a picture of short, brutal lives, more recent research suggests that if a peasant survived the perilous years of infancy and childhood, they had a decent chance of living into their 50s or even 60s, provided they weren't struck down by plague or famine. Their active lifestyle, free from the sedentary diseases of the modern world, combined with a nutrient-dense, if calorie-poor diet, contributed to a surprising level of physical resilience. You would have no concept of vitamins or minerals, of fiber or protein. Your understanding of food was based entirely on tradition and observable effect. This food keeps you full. This one soothes your stomach. This one is available in the spring. Yet, through this traditional wisdom, you achieved a diet that, for all its flaws, was remarkably well adapted to your circumstances. It was a diet that fueled long days of intense physical labor and sustained you through the harsh realities of the seasons. As you sit down to your evening meal of pottage, the same meal you had last night and will have again tomorrow, you don't think about its nutritional content. You think about its warmth, its ability to fill the gnawing emptiness in your belly. You are not grateful for the fiber or the B vitamins. You are grateful for the simple fact that there is food in the pot. But there is an irony in your existence that you will never know. The very poverty that restricts your diet to these humble, whole foods is also what protects you from the diseases of excess that afflict your masters. You are what you eat, and your food is a direct reflection of your world. It is gritty, tough, monotonous, and surprisingly, stubbornly enduring. The day is ending. The sun, a pale disk in the sky for most of the day, has finally dipped below the horizon, pulling its weak light with it. The world outside your hovel dissolves into shades of deep blue and gray. The sounds of the village are softening. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer is silenced. The shouts of children are gone, replaced by the low murmur of conversations from neighboring homes and the distant bark of a dog. It is time for rest. Inside, the fire is the only source of light. It casts a warm, flickering orange glow that dances across the rough walls and low ceiling beams. The air is thick with the familiar smell of wood smoke and the lingering aroma of the evening's pottage. The cauldron, now sitting by the edge of the hearth, holds the seeds of tomorrow's breakfast. The cycle is complete, ready to begin again. You sit on the packed earth floor near the fire, the warmth a welcome comfort against the encroaching night chill. Your body aches with a deep, familiar weariness. It is not the sharp pain of an injury, but the profound exhaustion that comes from a day and a lifetime of physical labor. Your muscles are tired from walking, from bending, from carrying. Your mind is tired from the constant, low-level anxiety of survival, from the endless calculations of risk and reward that foraging requires. Your family gathers in the small space, their faces illuminated by the firelight. There is little conversation. The end of the day is not a time for lively discussion. It is a time for quiet communion, a shared sense of another day survived. Your father is mending a tool, his hands moving with slow, practiced economy. Your mother sits by the fire, her head bowed, perhaps in thought, perhaps in prayer, perhaps simply in exhaustion. The only sounds are the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle whisper of the wind outside. There is no entertainment here, no books to read, no music to listen to, save for the songs you might sing yourself. The stories that are told are old ones, passed down through generations, tales of local saints, mischievous fairies, or the heroic deeds of long-dead kings. These stories, along with the gossip from the alehouse and the sermons from the village priest, form the entirety of your media landscape. It is a world woven from spoken words and shared memory. You prepare for sleep. There is no elaborate evening routine. You might wipe your face and hands with a damp cloth, but a full bath is a rare and complicated event. You simply remove your outer cloak and your worn leather shoes. You will sleep in your tunic, the same coarse woolen garment you have worn all day. It serves as both clothing and pajamas, a practical, all-purpose layer against the world. You unroll your straw-filled mattress onto the floor. The straw rustles as you lie down, a sound as familiar as your own breathing. You pull your thin, scratchy woolen blanket over you. It offers a meager but welcome barrier against the cold that will seep up from the earth floor during the night. The fire is banked, the embers covered with ash to preserve them until morning. The room plunges into a profound darkness, a blackness almost absolute, unbroken by the artificial lights of a modern world. As you lie there, waiting for sleep to come, you listen to the sounds of the night, the wind sighing around the corners of the hovel. The soft breathing of your family members is nearby, the occasional rustle of a mouse in the thatch. These are the sounds of your world at rest. You think of the day, of the damp chill of the woods, the sharp taste of the crab apple, the earthy scent of the mushrooms, and the murky brown of the river. You think of the endless, bland pottage and the surprising, savory richness of the tavern stew. Your life is a tapestry woven from these small, sensory details. It is a life of immense hardship, of relentless monotony, of constant, grinding poverty. It is a life where every single day is a struggle for the basic necessities of warmth, shelter, and food. And yet, it is a life. You have endured. You have used your knowledge, your strength, and your resilience to navigate the challenges of your world. You have found sustenance where others would see only weeds and waste. You have wrested a living from the margins, from the scraps and leftovers of a society that places you at its very bottom. There is a quiet dignity in this survival, a strength that is as profound and enduring as the ancient trees in the Lord's forest. As sleep finally begins to claim you, it is not a gentle, luxurious drift into unconsciousness. It is a heavy, dreamless state, a deep and necessary oblivion earned by the sheer, exhaustive effort of living. It is the body's simple, final reward for making it through one more day. The world of the medieval peasant, with its endless pottage and desperate foraging, feels a universe away from our own. Their lives, governed by the harsh rhythms of the seasons and the constant threat of hunger, were a testament to human endurance. They lived with a deep, practical intimacy with their environment that we have almost entirely lost, an encyclopedic knowledge of the plants and animals that meant the difference between life and death. Their struggles highlight the incredible fragility of existence without the safety nets of modern society. As you settle deeper into your own comfort, perhaps you can feel a thread of connection to that distant past. The resilience that saw them through the hungry gap is the same human spirit of ingenuity that fuels our world today. Their humble, whole food diet, born of necessity, holds lessons for us in an age of processed abundance. Think of them not as simple figures in a history book, but as people who lived, loved, and struggled with the same fierce desire to survive and provide for their families that we know today. So let the echoes of their world fade into the quiet of your own night. Feel the softness of your bed, the security of your home, and the peace of knowing that your next meal is not a gamble. Let their story be a gentle reminder of the comforts you enjoy. Allow your mind to drift away from the damp earth and smoky hovels and float into a peaceful, restorative sleep, cradled in the quiet luxury of the present moment.